All right, we're going to learn about many-to-many in your Power Apps, and I'm going to enjoy some Halloween candy along the way because we're going to make a Halloween candy tracker app to make this boring concept fun. What is many-to-many? Well, look at my little app here, right? So hit start and listen for the sound effect. That's right, I'm hilarious, I know. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a way to add some candy, okay? We're going to have a way to add some houses, right, or homes, right? But then when we go trick-or-treating, what we want to be able to do is choose a particular house, so maybe the creepy cabin. And then we're going to be able to choose the different candies that we've chosen. So we got 3 different candies at this particular place. And then we're going to hit save. And that is going to load all that in a many-to-many relationships, right? Because we have many houses choosing multiple items. And then if we kind of go back over here and we view our haul, you're going to see that there's all the different houses. And so if we go check out the Spooky Manor here, then I had Snickers and M&Ms there. If we scroll down here a little bit, we go to the creepy cabin that we just did. There's our Snickers, Twix, and Reese's. Can you tell I really like Snickers? So we're going to talk about all these mechanics while we kind of look at this app in detail. We're also going to talk just quickly about many-to-one, so make sure you understand what that is. At the end, we're going to talk about things that are specific, right? So whether you're doing it in Dataverse, SharePoint, SQL, Excel, like the first, we're just going to concentrate on the concept, but then at the end, we'll talk about some data source specific ones. Sound like fun? Then let's just switch over to my desktop and take a look. All right, to get us started, let's step back a step and just make sure you understand what many-to-one is. All right, many-to-one is your typical lookup, right? So I am in a particular table and I want to look up a single record from another place. So the many is the parent table, the table I'm doing the lookup from, and the one is the table that we are selecting a record out of. And the reason we call it a many-to-one is because you can only select one record on this side. So lookups are many-to-one. We see it all the time. So here's an example from my university program where we look at an employees table and we're like, all right, I want to have different employees, but instead of carrying their department manager, we create that relationship. So we say, all right, employees, you are connected to department ID 101. And that is a lookup to our department table where we could then find out that they're executive and Nicola, right? So many-to-one. And if we scroll down here, like you can see a visual of that. So if that blows your mind, right, like make sure you go check out the video up there that is about database relationships, kind of 101, right? Because this one is the carry on. This is a little bit more complicated version of what we spent a little bit of time there. So we're not gonna get into this anymore, but I want to make sure that you knew many-to-one is this. Because when we start thinking about, all right, what is a many-to-many? So many-to-many is a lookup as well, but the idea is instead of looking up a single record, we want to look up multiple records. So in this case, I'm saying, hey, my employees want to give to charity, but they might give to multiple charities. So we need to be able to have many, right? This was the many side in the previous example, and we still have that department ID column here, but we want to look up many charities. So the way that we typically do this is we create a many-to-many relationship. And the most common, best way to really do that is to create this thing over here we call a mapping table, or I sometimes call it the glue table. And so as you can see, this third table here, all it's going to do is it's going to keep up with all the relationships. So it's going to say, all right, employee ID 1, Nicola, she has a CID for charity ID of 402. So she gave to Frog Friends. And EID 1, Nicola, right, gave a 401 to Pet People. So Nicola donated to 2 different ones. But because we have this idea of she could donate to 1 charity, she could donate to 25 charities, we need the flexibility. And so that's where you create this thing called a mapping table. Now, depending on your data source, some of them can do some of this for you automatically. Like SharePoint, if you do a choice column and you do a multi-choice, so you say checkboxes, then it's creating a many-to-many for you. You just don't realize it. And the way that SharePoint does it is by storing the mapping table inside the record in SharePoint. Like, it's a little goofy. That's when you get those complex columns in SharePoint that are hard to work with, right? We have to start talking about kitten cats and all of that stuff. Patching gets weird. Or like Dataverse, if you do a many-to-many with lookups, then when you create that relationship, Dataverse actually creates this mapping table for you, but it's a hidden table, which kind of causes problems. We're going to talk about that type of stuff at the end. Typically, like if you're using SQL or Excel or any of the other data sources, you're going to have to create this yourself. And what you're going to see is that most of the time for me, even when I'm creating these type of relationships in Dataverse or SharePoint, I'm going to just create a mapping table myself, and then I'm going to control how it works so that I have complete flexibility, which is pretty normal. All right, that's enough of the blah, blah, blah. Okay, so hopefully this Excel file helps. Right? There's a whole bunch of different additional pieces here. Like I said, those are all covered in our Power Platform University, but we're going to get into that right now. So what we want to go do is we want to go look at this Power App that we built. On the welcome screen, as you can imagine, I just used Canva to make this pretty background, and I added a little start button here. And the start button plays an audio, and that's where you get the cat, that meow, right? So a little bit tricky to do that. We're not worried about audio effects today, but know that adding audio effects to buttons is possible. Okay, so if we click on that button, so then I get a lovely little screen. I quit with the design, right? I showed one pretty screen, the rest of them are kind of boring. And so the first thing you might want to do is manage candy. So if we go to manage candy, this is exactly what you think it is. This is a normal table. And then down here at the bottom, I'm using a form, right? So this is a gallery, a form. I've got the edit, add, save, and delete. And if we go over here to data, and then we look at Halloween candies and say edit data. Made it really simple because, right, like the data complexity doesn't matter here. It's really just about the relationship. So we got a candy name column, and then I made a choice column for size. And I think there's a couple other columns, right? So nothing too exciting here. And I did, like I said, I've used Dataverse for this. So that way, if you sign up to the YouTube library or any of my other training classes, you could just download this app for free. If you're not signed up for any of that, no big deal. We're just using Dataverse because it's convenient to package. We're not going to do anything Dataverse specific here. So there you go. That screen is like every other screen you've ever seen. You know, we have the different ones. If we create a new one, then we just fill out the form with our photo, our candy name, our size. Bingo, bango. That is adding candy types. Adding homes. Literally the same thing. We got a gallery, like I copy, pasted, changed the data source. Got a gallery up here, a form down here, and some buttons here. And if we go look at Halloween houses, also very simple data model, right? House name, street name, longitude, latitude, is haunted, some notes. Didn't really care about the data. I thought about kind of talking more about longitude, latitude, and I decided that would make this video too long. But just remember, you can always use location.longitude, location.latitude, and so you can write those automatically. So if you wanted to capture where you're doing this. So there's that table and that screen. So both of those very PowerApps 101 style stuff. So then the third screen here is trick or treat, right? Because we gotta go do our trick or treating before we can view the haul. So if you go to the trick or treat screen, this one a little bit more complicated, a little bit more interesting. So what we're going to do in this particular one, right up here at the top, we have a gallery that is just showing the Halloween houses. So if I click on Creepy Cabin, right, I did some visual effects to make it turn white. I just changed the template fill when they selected it. And so then down here, I've got another gallery. So I wanted to make this different and very visual. So I created a gallery for selecting the options, right? Because if you're going to choose many, right? So we're at one house, right? Remember, that's that parent side, right? So we got the one house, and now we want to have many candies because some houses give away multiple candy. Oh, those people, great, they are. And so since they can do that, we need to have this in here, right? And so the way that this works down here is when I click on Snickers, what's really happening in this gallery is on select, I am adding that candy to a collection called Cold Candy. So, and the first thing I do is I say, hey, if the candy, so if Snickers is already in the collection, then do a remove, so get it out of there. If Snickers is not in there, then collect it, add it. That's why if I click on Snickers, it's selected. If I click away, it's gone, right? I have the ability to add or remove these as I see fit. And so that's the way that we're doing that. A little unselect trickery there, but using a gallery as a way to choose things instead of making like a combo boxes or a bunch of check boxes felt like something fun to do. The visuals there, same type of thing. If we look at the template fill here, we're just saying, hey, if the candy is in the collection, then make it gray. And if not, make it white. And then we did the same thing on the labels. If you look at their font color, which is just called color, same type of logic. That's how we're getting that, I did it feel. Other things you might do is just show little check marks. So you might use a little check marks as an option. You could use a check box, right? That little select control in PowerApps, like whatever makes sense for you here. Then what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do the save. Okay. So the save is a little bit more complicated. And so there's the save. Before we look at that, let's just go look at the mapping table. So over here, I created one. I called it Halloween mapping table. And then if we say edit our data, here you can see that all I'm really doing is tracking a bunch of IDs. So this first column, house, is the ID, right? The GUID. It's just in a text column, but it's the GUID of the house that we chose. So Creepy Cabin's GUID is right there. The created date, as you know, is automatically there. So I don't know, it showed it, leave it alone. Candy, same thing. So if they clicked on Snickers, then we put the ID for Snickers in here. Skittles, we put the Skittles one in here, right? And then the mapping ID. So what I wanted to do here, this is the unique identifier. So think about in this, for our story today, like What if, say, the first house I go to, right, Dennis that lives next door to me. So if we go to Dennis's house and we hit him first and we get his candy, right? So that's our first haul. Then we go do all the neighborhoods around us. And then we come back, we switch costumes real fast and we go to Dennis's house again. So I wanted that to be a second haul from his house. So every time that we get candy from a house, we're going to create a primary key, a mapping ID. So like you can see, like I have 2 here and the houses are the same. So basically I hit this house once. It gave me whatever candy this is, whatever candy this is on that trip. And then if we look, let's see, so that's CD6. So here you can see that I went to that house a few different times, right? And so every time I went to that house, it got a unique ID and a different candy. Okay, and we'll see that in a second in practical terms. But this is all the mapping table is the different IDs so we can put the story back together later. So to save that, what we're going to do is first we're going to use the with function to generate a var ID. So var ID is just going to be the GUID. Remember, every time we go to Dennis's house, we want to have a new GUID, a new key, because that's a new haul. So that's creating the hall's GUID. And then we're saying for all cold candy as my candy. So cold candy is the collection we're populating by pressing these buttons down here. My candy, as my candy, that's just going to make it easier for me to use that data as we go through. So what we're going to do, so for every record in cold candy, so right now we have Twix and Reese's. So we'll do the Twix first. So patch the mapping table, defaults the mapping table, so create a new record in the mapping table. Set the mapping ID to that GUID. So then that way, right, our trip to Dennis's house, we've got that referenced. Set the house to whatever house we selected up here. And I think that was Creepy Cabin. Yep. So set it to Creepy Cabin. And then set the candy to My Candy Halloween Candy, which is the name or the ID column from Cold Candy. So in this case, that would set it to Twix. Then, right, because we have to do this twice because we selected 2 things. There's 2 things in Cold Candy. We'd repeat all these steps. And the second time through, right, everything would be exactly the same, except for the second record would go ahead and be the ID of Reese's. And then we would know that we went to Dennis's Creepy Cabin, and those are the 2 things we got. Once that is all done, we're then going to clear out cold candy. So that way when we go to the next house, we start over selecting candy, and we're going to set var record to blank. And var record is actually up here on this gallery on select of that. We were loading in the candy, right? So that way we know, or the house. So we would know which one we did, right? So let's hit play. Let's do this. Let's go around here. Let's choose Phantom Palace. I don't think I've used this one before. And now we got Phantom Palace. Let's go down here and let's just say at Phantom Palace, we got M&Ms and Skittles. Okay. So 2 pieces of candy from there. So we're going to say save. Boop. It's thinking it's done. As soon as it comes back, it's good. And so now if we go look, so we want to know what Phantom Place or Palace's ID is. So if we're going to go the long way, right? We're going to go back over here to houses. We'll say edit our data. And so Phantom Palace, oh, we got to show the column. So we'll find the Halloween house, right? That's the ID column. So we say save. So now over here, we can see, right? We can't edit the ID column, but there it is. And so if we look, all right, which one was Phantom? It is the 3rd one right here, right? So we'll just highlight it. There we go. So we'll slide over there. And so we're going to see that it is 9E, right? Like, don't worry about the rest of the characters. 9E is unique. Okay, so that's 9E. So if we go over now to our mapping table and edit data, we should see that, look, there are 2 records for 9E because those are the 2 records. And so if we went and looked, right, this would be what, I forget the candies we even chose anymore. I think it's M&Ms and Twix maybe, but one of these would be M&Ms and one of these would be Twix. And the mapping ID here is exactly the same because remember, that's our primary key for putting all this back together. So that's the record we created, or the 2 records that we created by clicking the button. So now how do we view that data back? So now we'll go back over here and we're going to go to view our haul. So up here at the top, we have a gallery. And so what this gallery is, it is grouping the mapping table by the mapping ID and the house. And so if we were to scroll through it, we should see in there is Phantom Palace. So if we click on Phantom Palace, because the data is all grouped that way, now if we go down here at the bottom, we're going to see that this one is filtering the mapping table where house equals gallery selected house, so Phantom Palace, and mapping ID, the mapping ID. So then that way we know that we're getting the right records there. Right? And I guess really we don't even have to do the house, right? If I think about that more, because the mapping ID is our unique identifier. Let's just clean it up then. We'll fix Shane's code as we go. All right, same results. All right, perfect. Okay, so that gets just the M&Ms and the Skittles that we chose as part from Phantom Palace. If we click on Creepy Cabin, we see those. Now, what you should be saying is, well, how does it know about the picture and the M&Ms there? So if we go click on that label, what we have to do is we have to do a lookup, right? So this is the records, but we know, remember from looking at our mapping table over here, edit data on mapping table, right? We know that our lovely little ones, it doesn't have the names or the pictures or any of that. That's because we just get the candy's key. So we have to look that data back up. And so that's where we say, hey, look up from candies, where Halloween candy equals the GUID version of that candy, and then put the candy name here. So that's where it says M&M and Skittles. Same thing for the picture. We're doing that same exact lookup, except there we're doing the candy photo. And if you're thinking back up here, remember this one? So if we were to go look at this one and look at its label, right, we had to do a lookup against Halloween houses, because that's the challenge of using a mapping table, right? Is it just has all the IDs. So all the information that you need to make a nice appearance for your users, it's got to be done with a lookup. But because we've done all of this and we've built this in a way that we control the pieces, we drive the bus here, right? So maybe, for example, maybe you want to go back over here to homes and you're like, hey, wouldn't it be great if in here, let's hit insert a label. Wouldn't it be great if here we could see how many pieces of candy we got from each house? So we could do something like that, right? We could say, all right, we want to count our rows. And what? We want to filter our Halloween mappings table. And what do you want to filter it on? We want to filter it on house equals, and then text this item dot Halloween house. And so look, Erie Estate has given us 2 candies. Creaky Cabin's given us 7 over time. Wicked Warehouse is 0. Spooky Manor. So we can see each house's numbers. And this is one of the reasons that like we try to focus here, not as much on the scenario. That's why I'm using my funny little Halloween stuff. I want you to focus on the data, how it connects and how you get the data back together, because every one of you is going to have different requirements, right? How you want to slice it, how you want to dice it. And so in this case, right, like this is showing a different way. If you wanted to, you could go back over to the candy screen and you could say how many houses gave us that candy or how many of those bars did we get? Like all of this additional data. The same type of thing, like when we talk about this mapping table, I keep opening this up. I should have just left this open in another window. But another thing you might do is you might find yourself adding more columns. So maybe you said, okay, well, sometimes they give me Snickers and they give me 2. And so I don't want to select Snickers twice. I want a quantity, right? So we could add a quantity column over here that was just a number column. And then in our patch, we would just patch in that piece of information as well. The idea here, the whole point of learning this data model is it's really, really flexible when you've got, different records over here, the mini side, using different ones. And sometimes they might give you 1 piece of candy. Sometimes they might give you 50 pieces of candy. And you're thinking, well, Shane, I don't work with candy. That's fine, right? These could be purchase order items. These could be incidents. These could be accident reports. This could be like we use this type of model all the time where we have an indeterminate amount of these children, but we're looking them up from another place. And so that becomes a many to many. And we typically speaking, I like to go in here and create a mapping table where this is just all the crazy relationships. Right? Like if we go here, I'll show you one more from my university class real quick. All right, so check out this data model. This one's around an inspection. And look, in this one, we got many to many, we got many to one, we got data all over the place. At the end of the day, though, the inspection that they're doing is really, this one right here, this is the mapping table. And you can see there's no actual information in here, but you have to kind of put it back together. So what is the RID, right? Like that is the, that's the response ID. That's the primary key for this table. Question ID, 1001, so we can see what question they ask. Is it clean? What was the question answer? True or false? That's the data, unique data we're tracking. And then what inspection is this tied to? So we have to go do a lookup for that. Let's tie to inspection 1 against the Tesla Model S. And then who did it, right, is back here. And then the department is out here. This is a very typical data model where you're mixing and matching. And a lot of people are missing the, how do I do the many to many? So hopefully this video helped. By the way, if you notice here, inspection title, right, that should be tied to inspector ID. It's a little typo. Don't judge me. I know that it's wrong. It's okay. Calm down. Don't yell at me. So now let's answer some of the questions that I think you're going to have out of here. So probably the first one you might have is you're like, hey, Shane, you use Dataverse. So why don't you just use the built-in Dataverse many-to-many? I'll be super honest. I have never built an app that uses Dataverse's many-to-many built-in relationships. Why? For me, the reason why is when you do Dataverse many-to-many, it creates a mapping table for you. Yay. But you can't see it, touch it, or interact with it. Boo. I don't like secret tables. I want to be able to control what goes on that mapping table. As you heard me say, like sometimes I like to throw extra columns in there. Sometimes I denormalize my data. Like you just never know. And I just don't like the lack of flexibility. Also working with that table, you end up having to use some things called relate and unrelate. Those are really goofy. Like I've thought about making videos, probably never going to do it because they are so goofy to use, I think. So typically speaking, I don't like to do this. If you do, maybe you're building something in Dataverse, you need to specifically use that functionality, like have at it. Like it works, it's good. It's just different. I like a lot of control and I lose a lot of control when I use that one. So then why did I use Dataverse for this? Well, really it was so that I could just package this app into a nice little solution and make it available for download over at training.powerapps911.com. That's really the reason I did it. So what about SharePoint? So SharePoint, if you go in and make a choice column, and say multi-select, that is a many-to-many. And like I said, it just kind of puts the table inside the record in SharePoint. It works. I use it all the time, but it's goofy. It's hard to work with. You can't do any of the extra tracking. I never use it as a data model. I use that kind of as a fun thing to demo. But you can do it. SharePoint will even do it with lookups. So lookups, you can make those multi-choice as well. So if you're using SharePoint as your data source, and you just need a very simple data model, but you want to be able to choose, like in the example I always use is my employees list, I have skills. And so I want to be able to choose both Nunchuck skills and PowerApps skills. So then that is technically a many-to-many. If you're using other data sources like SQL, Excel, or any of the other types of database solutions, most of them do not have complex columns. So like Dataverse and SharePoint had the choice columns where I could do many-to-manys. So all of those, you're going to just end up building your own mapping table. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I know it's a little nerdy, but these are kind of those next tier skills. In our Power Platform University, we spend a bunch of time learning this type of stuff, making up better data designs. And of course, I gave you the link just a minute ago, or very early in the video, to the 101 version of database relationships. So if you're blown away by this, like what just happened to me, start with that one and then ease your way into this one. So questions, comments, leave them below, right? Like people have been asking me to make this video for about 4 years now in my comments. And so I finally did it. So keep putting your comment in there, what you want. Maybe one day I will make your video. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.